Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Scott Keys, and this is your channel for photography, for wildlife, and for wildlife photography. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to protect your gear. I've got a lot of ideas for you, and I've got one or two that I bet you never even thought of. We'll get to it right after this. Now, photography can be a very expensive hobby, and my wildlife photography friends know that these lenses and these bodies can be extremely expensive. So protecting your gear makes a lot of sense, and it's often something we don't think about enough. Now, I have done this long enough to know that you can make mistakes, and I've made a few. And in this video, I'm going to tell you about some of those mistakes and what you can do to prevent those mistakes for yourself in the future. I'm going to show you some gadgets and gizmos. I'm also going to give you some common sense advice. And at the end of this video, I've got one tip that you've never tried because I made it up myself for less than $15, and it's something that I really, really love. So stay tuned to the end of the video and I'll show you that one. Now in this video, we'll break it down into segments. We're going to talk about insurance and prevention and cleaning and the elements. And we're going to talk about impact and slips and falls and travel. So we'll start with insurance because this is one that I get a lot of questions about. In fact, I got so many questions about insurance, I did a separate video for it. So rather than spend a lot of time in today's video, I will put my thumbnail up from that last video. Check that one out. It's going to give you a lot of details and some information on that. But I will tell you, I always give advice to anybody doing photography, even if it's just as a hobby, and even if your investment isn't significant, look into insurance. You can also often get it as part of a homeowner's or a renter's policy. There are separate insurances out there, and it can be as little as 1% of the value of your equipment per year. So I've got all those facts and figures in that other video, but I will tell you, for most people, the insurance is going to be worth the expense, especially for my wildlife photography friends. You're out in the elements, maybe you're hiking, you're traveling, you're setting things up. You're not always in the greatest and most controlled environments. And when you're looking at these insurance policies, they can really save you a lot of time, headaches, and especially money. Now, one of the basic places to start with any type of care is maintenance and prevention. Now, there are some very easy tips I'm going to give you here. One is get yourself a set of really nice brushes, maybe one of those rocket blowers or blowers that you see. This can be great for getting dust out of little spaces in here. And while it may not prevent a catastrophic injury to the equipment, what it might do is help you with the resale value by keeping nicks and dings out. But I will tell you, things like sand and dirt and debris, they can actually cause issues inside your camera, especially when it gets in the body. We'll talk about how to protect the body in just a minute, but I do want to mention that as we talk about prevention and maintenance. Now, in addition to the brushes and the blowers, another part of the camera that just needs some maintenance is the sensor itself. And most people do that through just cleaning. Now, I'm probably not going to be one to ever advise people on how to personally clean their sensors, but I will tell you, I've cleaned my sensors myself, and I do that through the use of a gel pen. Now, I don't recommend everybody do that because you can read some horror stories about doing that. There's another method called wet cleaning that you can do yourself, or maybe you just decide you want to send that in every now and then to the company to service it. I also want to mention, if you've got a lot of equipment and maybe you sell some prints or you have a website, look into a professional affiliation because often for a membership fee, you can get some free cleanings thrown into that service as well. Now, in addition to just basic maintenance and prevention, there's some protection against the elements. So I want to talk about elements and how we can deal with those. I reached out to my Instagram audience and I said, do you have any tips or suggestions or tricks? And a lot of people talked about moisture, cold, and heat. And for moisture, I wanted to deal with that for a second because when we talk about preventing damage, water damage in general is going to be an absolute killer for equipment. In fact, over the years, I've had 5 events that cost me significant damage to my equipment. 3 of those 5 were based off of moisture and water, pretty much getting into the water a little bit too deep. And 2 of those were dealing with impact, which we'll talk about in a minute. One tip came from a user that said, save your silicone gel packs. So here's a little gel pack that I just happened to have from a product that I got out today. And putting those into an airtight container can be very, very helpful in keeping things dry. Now, that might not be the body or the lens all the time. That could be dealing with something like your accessories, your memory cards, and things like that. Even your batteries can really get harmed with a lot of moisture in the air. If you're dealing with bigger equipment, you could look into some travel type bags. And while I'll talk about the travel bags in a minute, they do make some waterproof or moisture resistant bags. So you can take a look at that. I'll put an example of one over on the side. But what if it's more than just a little moisture in the air? What if it's raining or even snowing? Well, there's a couple of very common sense solutions for this one. And I'm going to put some pictures over here and I'll show you mine. But rain covers are essential, especially if you're a wildlife photographer. So I'm going to show you the ones I use. This is from a brand called Lenscoat. I'll mention them a couple times in this video. They make different sizes. So this one fits on my 400 2.8. And I keep this in my car all the time or in my bag if I'm traveling. and this is going to go over my lens and just cover the whole thing. Now they make some other versions, so over the years I've seen some that include a cover for your body or a sleeve over here, even a plastic piece that you can see through. So I'll put some examples of those on the sides, but I think everybody needs a rain cover. If you don't want to spend the $30 or $40 or $50 or $60 on a rain cover, look at least a $5 or $10 version. They make some very inexpensive, I call them the plastic bag rain covers, but they only cost a few dollars. Make sure you have them in your car, wherever you are at all times. Now, before I get into the camera itself, I want to mention a few accessories and some ways to protect them. There's two main accessories that we have that we're worried about that can be a significant investment. So batteries are one. So make sure you keep your batteries. I mentioned keeping them dry and in a waterproof container. That's going to be the most important thing you can do. And they absolutely make some cases. I've got some over here on my desk. There are a few that I'll show you over here, but that's going to be specific to the type of battery that you use. So rather than put that up as a graphic for every battery made, just know it makes a lot of sense to have some sort of protection for your batteries and think about having some way to keep them dry from the elements. The other major expense we have is memory cards. And I've seen a lot of people just kind of throw their memory cards in a Ziploc bag or throw them into a bag that they have with them, a backpack. I've seen a lot of people just slip them into their pants. Yes, I have washed them in my pants. I bet you I'm not the only one. Let me know down in the comments if you've done something as silly as that as well. I am going to show you just a really quick protector. Now, they don't make this one anymore, so it doesn't really matter the brand you use. This one's by Pelican. I just happen to like them as a company. There's two things, though, that I look at when I'm buying for storage and protecting my storage. 6 slots. Now think about the cost of your memory cards today. 256 gigs, a terabyte, several $100s of expense per card. You can easily have $2,000 in this little tiny container. And we often just assume that it's going to be fine all the time. Well, I assumed it was going to be fine until I was in South Texas and I reached for my backpack and I went to grab my memory cards and they weren't there. They had slipped out because I was moving things around in the bag, and I to this day don't know what happened to them. So since then, I've installed a tether, and we're going to talk about tethers a little bit more when we get to the camera body, but I've got this one on a string. So if you are buying a little protective case, see if it's got some way to hook something on. This one has a little slot here, and I've just put a simple tether in a carabiner clip, and then when I travel, I will clip this physically to my backpack. So something to think about for protecting your batteries, but also for your memory cards, which again, can just be very, very expensive. And speaking of travel, there's a lot of things we can do when we travel. So I'm going to talk about travel in two ways. One is traveling, getting on an airplane and going to a destination. The other is just your day-to-day travel in a car. So first, I'm going to mention hard cases. I've talked about these on the show before, and this is a Pelican case. You can see it's carry-on size. This is a 1510. I had mentioned during my holiday savings shows, I found some really great deals on this. And by the way, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you are. I saved people hundreds. I bet you I saved a couple people thousands of dollars over the holidays. Finding some really incredible deals, most of those through B&H Photo, but I look for the deals during the holiday season. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. I found a Pelican style, it's actually made by Pelican. It's called the Vault series. I saved you $100 per purchase. It was under $70 to buy a hard case. Now, it's really hard to do. If you're budgeting yourself for a hard case, figure between $150 and $300. That's a good sweet spot for those cases, but they can be found cheaper, especially if you're subscribed to the channel. So let's say that's my carry-on case, but what about just day-to-day travel, Scott? I'm in the car, I'm going from point A to point B. There's a couple things that I've done, and I'll show you some pictures of some of my Instagram followers. But first, I've started to implement this bag. So you can see this one opens from the front, and it's really easy to access. So I leave this actually unzipped, but I put it into my car, and I buckle it in, or I strap it in, or I wedge it in the bottom of the passenger seat. I will tell you, one of the best ways to damage your car or damage your gear is to put it on the passenger seat and then forget it's there. I've done this several times. You hit the brakes, it hits the windshield, it hits the dashboard. Something bad is going to happen eventually. All right, now stay tuned because I mentioned I'm going to show you a trick that I haven't gotten to yet. I'm going to show you that at the end, but it deals with how to secure this while you're traveling in your car. So hang around. I've got a great tip for you there. Now, I mentioned a lot of ways to protect your gear, but one of the most dangerous situations we get into, especially with my wildlife photography friends, is dealing with impacts, slips, and falls. So how do we physically protect our camera and our lens from those impacts? So I'm going to show you a couple things that I've got here for you. One is the use of a strap. So when I see somebody hand holding their lens, I worry. A strap offers me the ability to hike and not just hold that lens and walk through the woods. So I like to keep a strap on me all the time. I very rarely anymore just hold my camera. And the reason is because, you know what? I might trip, and I've done this before in the woods, And if I trip, a lot of times my hand is gonna go to the ground to break my fall, and often that camera might be the thing that breaks it. Now, I wanna walk through the camera real quick and just show you a couple things that I've done to protect it. And there's two major ones. I mentioned a company, Lenscoat. You're gonna see this up here. These are just neoprene sleeves. There's another company called Roland Pro. They make another sleeve. It doesn't matter to me which company you use. I've actually used them both. You will notice I've got it on the front, on my hood, and then I've got it on parts of my body. It used to be you could buy large ones that would cover your whole lens, but these lenses are getting so complicated and there's so many dials and switches that sometimes those lens coats they get in the way a little bit. But what I will tell you is they're great for scratches and dings and dents. It may not save your equipment. That little piece of neoprene, it's probably 4 or 5 millimeters. It may not save you from impact damage, but it's gonna save you from scratches and dents. So, thinking about resale value, it's a great idea. And I would recommend every wildlife or outdoor photographer to take a look at that, especially for your long lenses, because it can save you some time and trouble. Now, while I'm talking about the front of the lens, I wanna mention the one area of the lens that's probably at greatest risk of damage, and that's the front element. Now, that front element gets hit, or you drop it and it cracks, the lens is probably gonna be totaled out. To that point, lens hoods, please, my advice to every photographer, and it makes me crazy when I see a photographer walking out without a lens hood. I don't care what length your lens is, if it's a 200 millimeter or 100 millimeter, a lens hood could save you a lot of time and trouble. I have seen pictures of lenses shattered, and it's because they didn't have a lens hood on it. I don't understand why people don't use lens hoods, but I can promise you're gonna want one. A company called Zemlin, if you don't like the big one that it came with, they make shorter ones. So you can actually get one that's almost half the size of this. So it can be very short, but it might save you from that impact damage. So protecting the front element of your lens is critical. Another way to protect that, and again, I'll mention Zemlin again, I just love their products. This is a lens cap. These longer lenses often don't come with these physical lens caps. This one is very well made, and I can plug this in. So when I travel, I always make sure I put this on. Now, day to day, I don't have it on all the time, but when I'm traveling or anytime that lens hood is not attached, so if the camera doesn't fit my bag right, I make sure I have this with me and I put that on. So the lens caps are great ideas. I'll put links to Zemlin down below. I'm not an affiliate of theirs, I just like their products. Now, the last thing about that front element to protect it is the use of a filter. Now, filters are just physical screw-ons that are gonna go over the outer element of your lens. Often we just use transparent. They make all kinds of filters. It may affect a little bit of your optical quality. People will debate that, but if you're really worried about protection, it's a great way to go. And I have seen pictures of people show me their filter broken, but their front element survived. So we're gonna get onto the body of the camera as we move back onto this camera. Cage. Now, cages, and it's gonna be very hard to see, but cages are just a great way to cover the outside of your body. Now, most of these are used for accessories, so there's a lot of small threads in here and some cold shoe adapters, so you get to plug accessories onto that, and I certainly do that. I mount my iPhone up here sometimes. But for me, it's also a way just to protect the body, sometimes from impact, sometimes from scratches. If I lay my camera down, if I'm in the mountains and I'm on the rocks and I lay it down, that cage offers a little bit of protection. Adds a little bit of weight, but I find it invaluable. The first accessory I buy for my new camera bodies is a cage. And I'm not making that up. It is literally the first thing I do. Often I buy them together, or I buy the body and then I look for the best rated cage and I make that purchase right away. Now, on the back of this camera, an easy way to protect it for just a couple dollars are screensavers. This back right here, and you probably won't come through, but if I get it at the right angle, you might see it. It's actually shattered. So my screen isn't shattered, my screen protector is shattered, and they're designed to do that. So when I first saw that, my heart sunk until I realized, wait, I think I put that protector on. I double checked. I had the protector on, so my screen was saved. And these screens on mirrorless cameras are invaluable. To operate a mirrorless camera without that screen is really, really challenging. So I would encourage you, I mentioned the first thing I buy is the cage. Along with that purchase, I buy that screen protector and I make sure I have a screen protector available for a new camera body. Just a couple dollars, it is a great investment. In fact, when you look at this whole video and you think about like, where's the best bang for the buck, putting a screen protector on your camera for $10 might be the best thing you can do to help save the value of your camera body. Now, I'm going to take a couple of items off of the desk here, but I do want to show you something that was sent to me from a company called F-Stop. And this is a 300 millimeter lens inside here. I wanted to show you the size of this. These are protective covers. I've gotten comments from a lot of people that are using these, and they said they really, really love them. I want to thank my friend Vince over at F-Stop Gear. He sent me these. It's a great travel accessory. We mentioned being in the car or traveling on a plane, but imagine just being in your car and having some of this stuff laying around. You don't have to worry about impact, or you're traveling on a plane and you want to put some of this away. These little things are great. They fold on themselves, so you don't need tape or anything. And there's a small lens. They make 3 sizes in these, and I've actually got one that's the size of this table that I'm on. I put it in one of my videos as a tablecloth. It was so big. But these little protective covers from F-Stop Gear, really great idea. And then I want to talk about tethers and systems to link things together. So this is a big one for me. When I am putting my lens onto a tripod or a monopod, it is a great idea to tether it. Now, there are a lot of ways to tether things. So I'm going to just grab my monopod as an example here. And when I attach this, the greatest chance for me to break my equipment is right here. So I use a tripod. When I'm using a tripod, I'm generally not hiking with it, although I obviously do. But when I'm using a monopod, I'm almost always hiking with it. The only thing protecting my camera is this connection between the lens foot and this Arca plate clamp. So a couple things. You want to make sure you have a great clamp. This is by ProMedia Gear. This is their Tomahawk gimbal. It's my favorite side-mounted gimbal. If that failed, I'm in huge trouble. So to protect myself, I'll use a tethering system. So this particular monopod, this was by far my favorite monopod. This is the Leofoto 404. It's a 40 millimeter diameter. It's just an absolute beast, and it comes with this wrist band now, or this wrist holder. If you didn't have that, you may have to adapt it some way. But on the end of that, I've put this small clip, and this is a Peak Design. I know it's going to be hard to see through the video, but it's a little Peak Design clip. And on my camera body, or on my lens rather, I've put another small clip right here. And I'll show you a close-up of what that looks like. And then all I do when I put this on my monopod and I clip that on, it literally takes me 3 or 4 seconds to slide this into place, and I'm tethered. So now I'm connected to my monopod. For any reason, if that fails, if it falls off, if I didn't tighten it, which I have done, and it falls off, it gives me another chance to save my equipment. So it's now attached physically to my monopod and it can't leave. That is huge. I would recommend you come up with a tethering system for everything that you do, whether it's a monopod or a tripod. There may be other systems out there. I'll show you another thing that I have adopted over the years. Leofoto makes these QD holders. They're kind of like bicycle clips. They mount around the outside arm, and it's a QD holder. So if you had a tether with a QD port on it, you could put that in here, and you could connect it to your camera. If it fell off, you're protected here, or on your tripod, you're protected there. So I use that now, that Peak Design holder. This is what they look like. They sell them, by the way, just like this, 2 pieces. I think you get 2 of these, 2 sets of these. And you can use it in multiple ways. Why Peak Design? Peak Design has been doing this a long time, and there's a lot of copycats out there. I believe they're on their 4th generation. I call this the puck, of this little puck. Every time they come up with a new generation, it's stronger than the generation before. It is tried and true. I would not try to save yourself $3 or $4 buying a knockoff. If you're getting these, I would recommend going with Peak Design. They make a great product. Now, we've talked about a lot of ways to protect your gear, but I told you I have one bonus. This is a do-it-yourself that I came up with that I really, really enjoy. It's right down here on the table, and it is so inexpensive. You're going to want to build this when you're done. It's going to cost you almost nothing. I'll give you the accessories. The first accessory is this. I call it a dinger stopper. This is what goes into your seatbelt. Now, I can't advise you to not wear your seatbelt, so that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, a bird photographer and a nature outdoorsman, there are often times where I'm driving really, really slow, and maybe I took my seatbelt off, and maybe I don't want to hear that dinging. So these are sold on Amazon. I can put a link for it, but they're like $3. They just go right into the little seatbelt clip and it stops it. However, modify it, and I put a little carabiner clip in here, so there's a little loop there. That's next. The next piece is a tether. You get like 10 of these for like 10 bucks. Very inexpensive. And then the last piece is a connector. If you've got an Arca Swiss foot, you can buy an Arca Swiss. Very inexpensive. You don't need to waste a lot of money on this one. Very inexpensive. I use a QD port on my foot. So these are QD ports here. and you get where I'm going with this. I snap that in. This goes into my passenger seat belt. It sits on side of me, and it is now tethered to my physical car. If I stop short, the lens, and again, this is just about 10 inches, it will go a couple inches and it'll stop. It saves me from that impact. Yes, it happens. Yes, this has saved me before. And yes, I've actually not had that on years ago, and the lens did hit the dashboard a couple times. So I've used this. I try to remember this all the time. This stays in my car. So it serves two purposes. It's the bell stopper, but more importantly, it's the protector, and it's a great way to tether your equipment. If you don't have a QD port, what you're gonna do is see if you have an ARCA plate on the bottom of your lens foot. Just buy the most inexpensive ARCA clamp you can find and just connect that. Make sure it holds, but make sure that it is just something that connects. And that will tether your camera to your car. I told you, it's a good one, right? 15 bucks. I don't know if I've never seen anybody use that, by the way. If you have, let me know. The great thing about this is you can dismount, especially if you have the QD connectors because they pop off real fast. But even if you're clamped on there, you can just disconnect the seatbelt. Just hit the button, grab the camera. It takes 2 or 3 seconds to get the camera in your hands, and it takes another 2 or 3 seconds, maybe even less, to just secure it back in place. So a great travel piece. If you're in your car, you're looking for some protection. A lot of people here are using just seat belts. I mentioned sometimes I'll use my bag and I'll just keep it in a bag, but this is the way I travel. This is my protection when I travel. So that's your video today, how to protect your equipment. Went through a lot of stuff in this one. What was your favorite? And what did I miss? I know there's something out there, and I know there's some do-it-yourself ideas, so I would love to know about those down in the comments. Hey, if you're not subscribed to the channel, take a minute, hit the subscribe button. Almost half the people that comment on these videos and take the time to comment on the videos aren't even subscribed to the channel, so take a minute and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. That's really important, and that lets you know when I have a new video out. And then hit that like button, and that'll push the content out to other photographers and other wildlife photographers. And I really appreciate you taking the time to watch today's video. And as always, I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.